The first thing he identifies is this: some people who claim Jesus aren't really Christians. Pastor Seth, you're talking about people's salvation. You're talking about people's kind of eternal destination. Are you like proclaiming like truths about this over people's lives? Yes, I am, actually. And you can direct all of your emails to Jason Strand at eaglebrookchurch.org. Love you, brother. Glad you're doing what you're doing. Okay. No, listen. Jesus says in this text that there are people who, as hard as it is to believe, there are people in the church that they pretend to be all beautiful on the outside and all gorgeous on the outside. They look the part, they talk the part, they go to the church meetings and they go to the church worship services and they volunteer and they listen to KTIS and they listen to Christian music on the radio. These are Instagram Christians, okay? But he says that these people are like whitewashed tombs. Jesus' words, not mine, okay? In other words, these people look good on the outside, but they are spiritually dead. Jesus is saying, y'all are like Christian zombies, and your church is like Night of the Living Dead, just a bunch of dead things that are acting like they are alive. That's what he's saying. And here's what's even crazier is that this isn't the only place he says it. There's another spot in Matthew 7 where Jesus says that people are going to die and they're going to go to heaven and they're going to be recounting their lives to Jesus. And they're going to say, I did this in your name and I did this in your name and I did this in your name. And Jesus is going to say, I never knew you. You never did this for me. It's put this way in Titus 1:16, where it says, they claim to know God, but by their actions, they deny him. In other words, it's possible to be in the church and not know Jesus. Did you know that? Some of the biggest atheists I've ever met are people who've been going to church for years. Come on, somebody. And listen, length of time has nothing to do with it. Has zero to do with the equation. There are people who've been going to church their whole lives, going to church for decades, going to church since they were little kids, maybe even most of their lives, and they've never really met Jesus. And you might say, well, Pastor Seth, that's a little harsh, isn't it? That's a strong statement to make. Did you read the text we just read? I don't know that it's harsh enough, to be honest. Is it possible to have a gym membership and not be in shape? Is it possible to pay for a streaming service that you never watch? Yeah? Is it possible to buy some clothes you never wear? Yeah? Is it possible to go to church 4 times a year and call yourself a church-going Christian? Right? I mean, if all of that is true, then why is it so hard to believe that there are people in the church who don't really know Jesus? There are some people who go to church and they call themselves a Christian, but they're just really not born of the Spirit of God yet. They have not been transformed by Jesus. They may be a church member, they may carry a Bible, they may claim one thing, but they've never been converted, never been forgiven, never been transformed by the power of Jesus. In other words, we need to understand that going to church doesn't make you a Christian. Following Jesus does. Okay? Even believing in God. I believe in God. I'm super spiritual. Are you? Really? That doesn't make you a Christian. Following Jesus does. It's an amazing thing. The Bible says that Satan himself was beautiful, the most beautiful of angels. He could quote all the scriptures backwards and forwards. That is not just a member of your cool local hipster megachurch. That is Satan. Okay? Yeah, I know. Keep the emails coming. Again, that's Jason Strand at eaglebrookchurch.org. That's okay. Why is it sometimes that the so-called Christians let us down and hurt us and betray us and do things that are really, really horrible and disheartening? It's because for some of us, here's what happens. We doubt God because of something said to you by someone who was not speaking on Jesus' behalf and has never met Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean that it didn't hurt. And it doesn't mean that it's not significant what happened between the two of you. And it doesn't mean it wasn't a painful experience. What it does mean, though, is that as you work through the pain of that experience, you need to be reminded that these people do not speak on God's behalf. These people do not speak God's truth over you. So do not confuse their voice with God's. Please, do not do that. In my life, when I took a break from ministry, this was the work that I had to do. This was the work I had to do. I had to take this dump truck of garbage that was over a decade in the making, constantly being dumped on me, and I had to kind of sort through it about, is there anything here from God, or is this just a lot of garbage from a lot of people who don't know Jesus? I had to work through that in my life. There might be some advice for living from a spiritual zombie. That's okay. I don't know, right? But we need to identify what's what before we let doubts and fears into our insecurity, into our sense of self. Okay, there are people in the church that don't know Jesus.